You're watching Investigation Discovery on Demand.
She found her husband shot in their own bed.
The back door was open. The gun cabinet was open. I was basically freaking out.
Police thought the mother of three knew more than she let on.
Something ain't right here, man. I'm telling you.
Detectives couldn't break her. They tried to trick her.
I couldn't get on the telephone fast enough. I said, start the camera and get out of there.
Did she really kill her husband? Or were police setting her up?
You really want me to believe that the police officers arrived at your house convinced of your guilt?
The former beauty queen was used to being judged, but never like this.
This is not what I was expecting. It was a circus, the whole thing. There are always two sides to every story.
I'm Paula Zahn, and tonight we're on the case in Robinson, Texas, a small town outside of Waco. What began as an early morning call for help from a beautiful mother of three would become a tale of lies and betrayal. When police set a trap for a suspect, what they caught on videotape was so shocking, you're gonna have to see it to believe it. Just before dawn on November 9th, 2005, a call came in to the Robinson, Texas Police Department.
Robinson 911, what's your emergency? I got up this morning. I was in my son's room because I didn't sleep. My back door was open. My husband's guns are all gone. And there's blood on the bed. And he is gurgling foam stuff out of his mouth.
The caller was Darlene Gentry, a 31-year-old former beauty queen. Darlene and her husband Keith had been together ever since they were college sweethearts. The young couple had bought a home and started a family. They had 3 young boys. Darlene and Keith Gentry seemed to be living the American dream. Darlene Gentry agreed to sit down with us to discuss what would become one of the most sensational crimes in Texas.
How would you describe your family life once the 3 boys came along?
I could tell the light of his life and they were the light of mine. They're a good combination of both of us, so you could see his personality in them and also in mine, so they were our life.
On that night in 2005, Darlene said her baby was sick, so she slept in his room instead of her own. When she went to wake her husband up in the morning, she heard a noise.
Describe to us what happened once you were awakened.
I had realized the back door was open, and because you could feel the breeze coming through. And so I'd gone through just to shut it, and that's when I noticed things weren't right. You know, the gun cabinet was open.
Feeling scared and vulnerable, Darlene says she called out for her husband. There was no answer.
I go still again, hollering at him to get up, you know, that somebody had been in the house. I get over there, and that's when I realize the noise is actually coming from him.
As she got closer, Darlene says she saw blood on the bed. Keith was making a strange noise, and pink foam, she says, was coming out of his mouth. Darlene says she had no idea what had happened, but the sense of danger was overwhelming. She started to panic.
Honestly, I don't know if I just went into a state of shock. I guess you could say I was basically freaking out.
Describe what happened from that point on.
I just was focused on the boys. Get out of the room, get out of the room. You know, let's go in here, and I got him into the living room.
It was just after 6 a.m., about an hour before sunrise, when Darlene called 911.
I got a page from the police dispatch of a home invasion robbery, and the homeowner possibly was shot.
Police rushed to the Gentry home. With their dashboard cameras rolling, the first officers arrived at the scene. Knowing it was a possible shooting, police were already on high alert. And then they spotted something on the lawn.
Got guns on the ground right here.
There were weapons found stacked in the front yard of the residence.
And with the entire Gentry family and possibly a gunman still inside, the officers prepared for anything.
Stand right here and just keep scanning. Don't let anybody near them guns.
As one policeman stood guard over the guns, other officers went inside the house. It was a pressure-packed moment. Officers had to search for an intruder and get Darlene and her boys to safety. And it all had to happen as quickly as possible. The house had to be secured before paramedics could be allowed in to treat Keith. After going through every room, it became clear if someone had been there, they were now gone.
You have any idea who this could have been?
I have no idea.
Okay, do you know which way they went?
No, I saw nothing.
Once the house was cleared, police turned their attention to Keith Gentry. He had been shot one time in the head. He was still alive, but barely hanging on.
This guy's in bad shape. He got a hole in the head.
Keith's parents, Wayman and Glenda Gentry, lived right next door. And they immediately ran over, but police wouldn't let them come into the house.
And no one was telling you anything?
Wouldn't tell us.
We saw him when they put him in the ambulance outside.
It was a heartbreaking moment. Wayman and Glenda felt helpless. All they could do was watch from a distance as the ambulance pulled away and took their son to the hospital. As doctors tried desperately to save Keith's life, police were back at his house trying to get information from their only possible witness, Darlene Gentry. The circumstances were starting to overwhelm the mother of three.
It was like a circus. I mean, it was just so much happening. And we're talking, you know, children that from 5 to 19 months at this time. So they're scared, not knowing what's going on. They finally let Glenda come over and get them.
Once inside the house, Glenda took care of the children and pressed a detective for information about her son Keith.
I says, "What is wrong with Keith?" And he said, "He's been shot in the back of the head." I said, "Is he alive?" And he said, "He's breathing. He was breathing when he left here." That's what he said. And I said, "Okay." So I went in and got the boys. Well, as long as he was alive, there was hope.
Detectives made a sweep of the house. They quickly realized there were no signs of forced entry. And the gun cabinet looked like it had been opened with a key.
Nothing was missing. The weapons were the only thing that had been tampered with, and they were stacked in the front yard.
But Darlene had told them the back door was open when she woke up. And with the guns missing from the cabinet, she thought there had been an intruder in her house. Investigators were getting suspicious. They had a lot of questions about the shooting of Keith Gentry.
Something stinks about this, Gary. Something ain't right here, man. I'm telling you.
As 31-year-old Keith Gentry was fighting for his life, police were trying to figure out who shot him and why. They were hoping his wife Darlene might know something, but what she was telling them only raised more questions. While crime scene investigators began a top-to-bottom search of the Gentry home, detectives asked Darlene to come downtown and answer some questions. All she said she wanted was to be with her husband in the hospital, but she agreed to go.
And I got a consent to search from her and asked her to come back to the police department so I can get a more in-depth feel of what was going on.
Darlene told detectives she would help in any way she could. She'd let detectives take her fingerprints and a sample of her DNA. She also agreed to have her interview recorded. Just hours after her husband had been shot, Darlene sat down with Lieutenant O'Connor and once again went through the events of that morning. With the camera rolling, he asked her about what she heard and didn't hear, considering that Darlene said she had been sleeping in her children's bedroom at the time of the shooting.
I really appreciate your patience with me on this, Darlene, but I'm trying to figure out, you could hear the kids, but there had to have been a gunshot that went off inside that house, and gunshots are loud.
And that's what I keep trying to physically wrap my brain about. I had the door closed to the kids' bedroom, but our bedroom, we always keep it open.
Darlene said she did wake up around 5:15, but turned over and went back to sleep.
But you think you heard something at 5:15 in the morning?
Something had to have woken me up. I heard the dogs barking after I woke up, but in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the dogs did something right outside the window.
Police went through her story over and over again for an excruciating 2 hours. Darlene says she was still focused on getting to the hospital, but she was told that as the only possible witness, it was important to get all the facts.
When an officer tells you to do something, that's what you're supposed to do. And that's what I did.
A little while later, the hospital called and told police to get Darlene there right away. Keith Gentry was now brain dead.
Darlene, how did you get the news that Keith had died?
The whole reason why the hospital had basically made the officers take me up there is because they were wanting us to consent to do organ transplant.
At the hospital, Darlene and Keith's family made the painful decision to take him off life support and donate his organs.
He was somebody that I loved, I produced children with. There's that bond that you lose, and so part of me still feels almost numb.
I don't care who you are, I think half of you dies when a child dies.
The case was now a murder investigation. Back at the Gentry home, investigators were starting to find evidence.
In the bottom of the house trash was a latex glove that had been rolled down as if to remove the glove, and inside was a spent .22 cartridge.
The detective called me while we were at the hospital, told me he found a shell casing in the trash can, and asked me what size bullet may have caused the victim's injuries. So I visited with the ER doctor, and he says it's going to be a small caliber, possibly a .22.
Keith's father told detectives he had given his son a .22 caliber revolver as a gift a few years back.
All the other guns that had been in the gun cabinet were placed out in the yard, except for the .22 pistol.
Investigators believed that was the murder weapon. Police searched the entire house for the gun, but had no luck.
We did look in all the air vents. There was a well outside the house that we obtained a large magnet to see if we could find the gun down in there with the magnet, and we did not find the gun at all.
Investigators were left with a lot of questions and not many answers. They once again turned to their only witness, Darlene Gentry. Darlene was an emotional mess. She had just lost her husband, the father of her 3 children. But despite that, she agreed to go back to the police station and answer more questions.
You can't think of anyone that would do any harm to you or Keith?
No, I'm telling you.
Darlene said Keith was well-liked by everyone, but someone clearly wanted him dead, and investigators needed to find out why. Soon, the questions began to focus on Darlene and her marriage.
And y'all's marriage was good, except for the arguing of the money.
Yeah, and every married couple argues about money. It wasn't anything different. He had no girlfriends, I had no boyfriends. I mean, we were fine on that.
It appeared as though you had a pretty happy marriage, did you?
We did. I mean, no one has a perfect marriage, because if I said that, I would be lying, because we would argue about little things here and there.
Could an argument over a little thing become a motive for murder? It didn't seem likely, but as police went over her story, they found out something that raised a huge red flag. Darlene was a registered nurse, and when detectives learned that she didn't give her dying husband any medical care, they became extremely suspicious.
You know, certain people act differently in a traumatic type event, but with her training and experience, you would think that she would step in there and help, especially a husband.
Investigators were zeroing in on Darlene, and she began to feel the heat. The more they asked her about her marriage, the more she began asking questions of her own.
Are we looking to the point that I'm going to have to get an attorney or something? This is... I haven't done anything. I loved my husband, and I would have never done anything to take him away from his boys, ever.
As Lieutenant O'Connor continued to press her, Darlene began to break down.
I've tried to be straightforward and honest with everything that I'm telling y'all, and what I don't know, I'm telling you, I don't know. I've never been in a situation like this, and I'm just starting to get extremely nervous just because I've gone over this even with you 5 different times, and it's just, and I know that's your job. I know it is, and I'm sorry, I'm just...
Finally, realizing she was a possible murder suspect, Darlene asked for an attorney.
The lawyer called me and said, "What are you still doing there?" And I'm like, answering questions. You know, I just answered in, truthfully, and he was like, "Get out of there. You don't have to be there."
The entire time Darlene was at police headquarters, investigators were at her house searching for clues. When Darlene ended the interrogation, she also told police to leave her house and stay away unless they had a search warrant.
Hey, terminate the search. She just called an attorney and he wants us to clear out.
But as they cleared out of her house, investigators took with them the glove and the shell casing they had found in the trash. It wasn't trash anymore. Now it was evidence in a murder investigation. Coming up, could this beauty queen bride be a cold-blooded killer?
I knew that I hadn't done this, so I wasn't afraid.
As police waited for the evidence to come back from the crime lab, they began to take a hard look at Keith Gentry's wife, Darlene. Had there really been an intruder in the house that morning? Or could the mother of 3 have murdered her own husband? Darlene Gentry was desperate. Her husband was dead, and a detective had just put her through a grueling interrogation, even accusing her of playing games with the truth during questioning.
I told him, hold up, you know, this is not a game. This is, you know, our lives that we're talking about. This isn't something that, you know, we're just playing around with like he was implying. So I knew that I hadn't done this, so I wasn't afraid.
To Keith's parents, Darlene was family. It was impossible to think she could have had anything to do with their son's murder.
She'd just always been so good.
And we take our son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws into us like our children.
From the moment they met Darlene, they thought she was the perfect match for their son.
What do you remember about the early days of Keith's and Darlene's relationship?
The fun they seemed to have, laughing and joking, and it
Darlene's pretty small.
Yeah.
They just made a good-looking couple. We loved her to death.
Yeah.
The whole family did.
But the Gentrys could see that Darlene and Keith's marriage started to sour after the birth of their 3rd child.
You just knew they was angry at each other if they was both really quiet. I mean, you could feel the tension.
As police dug deeper, they learned the couple was having financial problems.
It appeared that maybe Darlene had been spending the money, the family money, on other things other than paying bills.
Wayman and Glenda told investigators that Keith had confronted Darlene about it the night before he was killed.
On the night before Keith was murdered, your in-laws told me they watched the two of you have a very heated discussion, and that Keith later came over and told his father that he had found out that you had gotten a number of credit cards without his authorization and run up a lot of debt on them. And that triggered an enormous fight.
We actually sat down and had probably the most civil conversation about all of this than we probably had in our entire marriage, and talking about doing different things of, you know, consolidating that with the house loan and things like that, and getting rid of all of that.
Darlene says it was just a conversation about finances between a husband and a wife. But to investigators, it was another red flag. And then they came across something else that sparked their interest. Keith had 2 life insurance policies valued at $750,000.
That's a substantial large amount of money. And that's a pretty good motivating factor for certain individuals to commit murder.
Darlene says she knew all about the insurance policies and that she would never have hurt her husband for money.
Police say that you had made some sort of sick calculation that Keith was worth more to you dead than alive.
That's their perception. No one's life is worth money. I mean, that's just plain and simple. He was my husband, father of my kids, and money did not mean anything compared to our children and our marriage.
But police were still suspicious of Darlene, and the evidence didn't seem to support her theory that an intruder had been in the house that morning. Investigators found fingerprints on the gun cabinet and one of the weapons left on the lawn, but they didn't belong to any intruder. They were Darlene's.
Of course my stuff is going to be everywhere. I lived there.
But police were also interested in getting DNA test results on the latex glove found inside the house. At the Henry C. Lee Institute of Forensic Science, Dr. Mike Adamowitz talked to us about the DNA evidence.
Explain to us how you leave behind your DNA on the inside of a latex glove.
Well, pretty much anything that your body comes in contact with, your cells are going to come off on. Our bodies shed skin cells all the time. It's part of a natural process of renewing our skin. Every single one of those cells has our DNA.
When the test results on the latex glove came back in the Gentry case, they showed Keith's blood on the outside and Darlene's DNA on the inside.
They were able to link some DNA from the glove to Miss Gentry, so those gloves is something that she had handled or had worn.
Police were now convinced Darlene Gentry had murdered her husband and set it up to look like a break-in.
The police told us once they found a latex glove in the garbage with your DNA on it and a shell casing from a .22 caliber gun, they were pretty sure you had something to do with your husband's murder.
Well, to have my DNA on the gloves was very logical because I would have brought them home from my work. Keith been having blood sugar issues, and I know that we had used them for that. I mean, there's explanations out the wazoo why I would have my DNA on it.
Even if Darlene had used gloves while testing Keith's blood sugar, that still didn't explain how a .22 shell casing, the same caliber as the bullet that killed Keith, was found inside the glove. Police had a theory.
She picked the .22 shell up with the gloves and rolled the gloves down with the spent shell inside the glove.
Darlene has her own theory.
If you didn't put that shell casing in the trash, who did?
Either Detective Noel, just because they wanted to wrap all of this up, or the person that actually, committed this just to leave things around.
Darlene says those shell casings actually support her innocence. Why would she get rid of the gun and yet leave behind a critical piece of evidence?
Why would I be dumb enough, if I was going to do something like this, to leave that piece of evidence, but be smart enough to get rid of the weapon? I mean, it makes no sense.
But it all made perfect sense to police. 3 weeks after Keith Gentry was murdered, they issued a warrant for Darlene Gentry's arrest.
It was just an accumulation of things, strictly circumstantial, but still enough for us to obtain a warrant.
Keith's parents were following the investigation closely, and they were certain police had it all wrong. They still believed in Darlene.
What was your reaction when you heard Darlene was arrested for your son's murder? Could you believe it?
No, still didn't. Texas Ranger told us that you're not going to like this. She killed your son.
Coming up, a dramatic sting operation. Will police catch Darlene red-handed?
I couldn't get on the telephone fast enough. I said, start the camera and get out of there.
Less than 3 weeks after her husband had been shot, Darlene Gentry was arrested for his murder. While prosecutors built a case against her, Darlene maintained her innocence. Because the case against Darlene Gentry was circumstantial, prosecutors knew they were going to have a hard time proving she killed her husband.
We felt like it was one that we could get an indictment from the grand jury and could try, but it wasn't what you'd call a slam dunk.
Meanwhile, Darlene was trying to pick up the pieces and move on with her life. She decided she could no longer live in the house where her husband Keith had been murdered. She got in touch with a home builder named Robert Pavelka. Pavelka gave Darlene directions to a piece of secluded land next to a pond. A few hours later, she got back in touch with him.
She called me back and said, does the pond come with the land? And I told her, yes, it does. And she said, well, that's great, because Keith always wanted a pond for his kids to go fishing in.
Did you tell Robert, you know, Keith had liked to fish and you wanted the boys to know how to fish and it would be great to have a pond?
Yeah, well, and that's what I told him. I said, that is something that at one time Keith would have loved to have had.
Pavelka says Darlene was so excited about the pond, he wasn't surprised when she called to say she was going to buy the property. A few weeks later, she met up with him to sign the paperwork.
At the end of the deal, she said, well, you can cover that pond up now. And I kind of looked at her strange, because that was why she really wanted the land.
Darlene has her own story. She says she and her mother had discussed the safety of the pond, and with 3 young boys, she decided to fill it in.
Mom told me, she said, well, she said, you may, you know, think real hard about covering this up. She said, so you don't have to worry about the kids at the young, you know, their young age.
Pavelka knew that Darlene had been arrested for her husband's murder. And something about her sudden reversal about wanting the pond filled in didn't feel right to him.
For 2 weeks, you know, it really bothered me. I said, you know, why, well, she wants the land for the pond, and now she wants me to cover it up. So I called a friend of mine.
Pavelka's friend worked in the county sheriff's office. He put him in touch with Texas Ranger Steve Foster.
The first thought that I thought was, she has thrown the .22 pistol in the tank.
It was just a hunch, but Foster was a seasoned investigator, and to him, Pavelka's story added up to just one thing. Darlene had gotten rid of the murder weapon in the pond and now wanted to cover it up. He called Lieutenant Tracy O'Connor.
As soon as he told me about the pond location, I immediately thought, I said, you know, I bet you that gun's there. He said, that's what I'm thinking.
They called in a state police dive team.
2 of them suited up, began to search the pond to see if they could find a weapon. 15 minutes into getting into the water, one of them said, I've got something. And sure enough, he pulled up a .22 pistol.
The pistol matched the description of the gun missing from the Gentry home. Police believed they had found the murder weapon.
That was a key piece of evidence that we really needed, was that gun.
But what good would the gun be in proving their case if they couldn't link it directly to Darlene? Investigators devised a scheme to do just that.
We went about trying to figure out a plan as to get her involved more, because we knew that she could say, you know, it's not me, somebody else put it there. We wanted to seal the deal with her.
They turned to Robert Pavelka for help.
We talked about it, how could we get her back out there? And I said, well, the pond has to be pumped to either push it in or to clean it out. Either way, the water's got to go.
Pavelka called Darlene to set the bait. He told her he needed to drain the pond before filling it. Investigators figured it wouldn't be long before Darlene would show up at the pond to retrieve the gun. And if she did, they'd be ready for her.
The idea that we finally came up with was, we'll sit there and watch the pond, but let's get a video camera and set it up.
Foster waited in his car up on the roadway while his partner hid a video camera in the woods. The trap was set and the waiting began.
We sat out there overnight in the dark thinking that she would come during the middle of the night, and she didn't.
Night turned to day. No Darlene. Pavelka made another call and told Darlene he wouldn't be able to drain the pond until the following day. The vigil continued for several hours, and then, there it was. Foster spotted Darlene's SUV.
I'm watching her pull up in her SUV. She gets out, and I see her walk off into the woods toward the pond. I couldn't get on the telephone fast enough. I said, start the camera and get out of there.
Foster's partner scrambled to action and was able to clear out just before Darlene arrived. The sting was playing out exactly as planned. Here was Darlene Gentry, caught on camera, wearing boots, wading into the water.
She walks around, walks into the pond, has a probe of some sort, and begins looking for the gun.
It was clearly her in the water, looking for that weapon in the exact spot where those divers had found it.
Darlene spent almost 20 minutes at the pond before leaving.
Unbeknownst to her, we had already found the gun, and it was already in DPS Austin being analyzed to make sure it was the murder weapon.
You almost wish you were in the woods with the gun and walking out and say, hey, you looking for this?
Police were satisfied. They felt they had carried out the sting operation to perfection, and it was all captured on tape.
It was excitement. This was the piece that was going to put her in jail, and we knew that.
The video looked promising, but if it was Darlene, did it really prove she had thrown the murder weapon into the pond? Since police had already retrieved the gun, where was the moment when Darlene was caught red-handed with the murder weapon? Had police actually sabotaged the operation by removing the gun themselves? Darlene said she wanted the pond drained so her boys would be safe. Couldn't she now argue that she was just checking it out one more time before the work was done? After all, she didn't come out to the pond after dark. She drove her own car in broad daylight. Was this video really the smoking gun? It would be up to a jury to decide. Coming up, the dramatic trial and shocking defense of Darlene Gentry.
I have no idea what he was in his mind, where he thought he was going with all of this.
Want more on the case? Go to investigationdiscovery.com/Paula Zahn and view more exclusive interviews and behind-the-scenes video. Investigators believe the case against Darlene Gentry was coming together. They had just captured Darlene on camera, wading into the pond in the same spot where they had discovered a gun. Would the tape seal Darlene's fate, or had police blown their own sting operation? When prosecutors saw the sting operation video, they thought they had the last piece of the puzzle. But they were also concerned that identifying Darlene on camera might be a problem.
The first question was brought out was, are we sure that's Darlene Gentry? I said, it's Darlene Gentry. I checked the vehicle, it's Darlene. I mean, there's not very many long blondes going to be out in the woods walking around in a pond probing for a pistol.
That was enough to satisfy prosecutors. They were ready to go to trial.
When we had that evidence, that really tied the knot on it. And what was a circumstantial case where the defense could perhaps make some certain arguments became much less so.
And there was another piece of important evidence also secured. The crime lab reported that the shell casing found inside the latex glove was fired from the weapon found in the pond. Armed with the new evidence, prosecutors were able to indict Darlene for the murder of her husband, Keith. The trial began on February 6th, 2007.
The evidence in this case is going to show to you that defendant Darlene Gentry, seated here in this courtroom next to her attorneys, is guilty of the offense of murder.
Prosecutors told jurors that Darlene killed her husband and then tried to make it look like an intruder had done it. They said even the 911 call was part of an effort to throw investigators off her trail. They played it in court.
I got up this morning, I was in my sunroom, censoring because they didn't sleep. My back door was open. My husband's guns are all gone. And there's blood on the bed, and he is gurgling foam stuff out of his mouth.
There's nobody that comes in and finds their husband shot and calls 911 and goes into a long labored account about how the house has been broken into and what's missing, and then gets to kind of an, oh, by the way, my husband's here with a gunshot in his head. That's just not the way people act.
Prosecutors presented the physical evidence against Darlene.
The shell casing, the glove, the DNA, the fact that the guns were piled out in the yard stack there, the fact that her fingerprints were on one of them.
Then jurors got to see the prosecution's smoking gun. The video showing Darlene allegedly looking for the murder weapon in the exact spot where police had found it.
I know the jury watched the video very intently, and you could see it made a big impression on them.
With the video fresh in the jurors' minds, the prosecution rested. Darlene had always denied killing her husband, and now she was prepared to give her side of things.
How did the murder weapon end up in Robert Pavelka's pond?
Well, that would be a good question. Need to ask the person that actually put it there, so.
Police say you put it there.
Well, good for them, but there we go again. Prove that. I know I didn't put it there. They don't know who put it there.
According to Darlene, she went to the pond that day because she heard rumors that police believed the gun might be there. She says Robert Pavelka told her he would meet her there.
In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe if I go out here and, meet him and we find this, then I'll have somebody that's there with me that can see, look, here's this, and we can get it to somebody.
But when she got there, Pavelka was nowhere to be found. Darlene was alone, yet continued looking for the gun. She now admits that was pretty stupid.
It was one of those things, as I'm even doing this, I'm thought, what am I doing? Why am I even here?
But Pavelka denies ever telling Darlene he was going to meet her at the pond. He says all he did was call and tell her the pond would be drained and everything else she did on her own. Darlene believes police used Robert Pavelka to illegally set her up, and that the entire case against her was built on police and prosecutorial misconduct.
You make some very strong accusations. You say that false evidence was presented to the jury and there was perjured testimony.
You have Pavelka sitting up on the stand saying that the phone conversations between him and I were recorded. The Texas Ranger gets up there and says there was no recording ever made. So you have these people up on the stand, one saying one saying the other, and the judge is allowing it.
As for false evidence, Darlene says look no further than the testimony of Detective Knoll about the .22 caliber shell casing found inside the latex glove.
Noel says everything else was checked. Here conveniently is this trash can that nobody wanted to go into, but he did, and he finds this glove. He says he finds the glove, hands it to one of the experts that's there on the scene. They're the ones that find the casing. Well, there's no picture of it actually being in the trash. Nobody was around when he found this.
In fact, there were crime scene photos taken of all the evidence found at Darlene's house, except the glove and shell casing. But why would police and prosecutors want to frame her? Darlene says it's simple. They wanted a conviction and made up their minds early that she was the killer.
You really want me to believe from the early moments that the police officers arrived at your house, they were already convinced of your guilt?
Regardless of what they had found and what they saw, they were dead set that I was guilty, that I did it, and that was the end of subject.
Darlene says the proof is in the dashboard camera video, taken less than 7 minutes after police arrive at her house.
Something stinks about this, Gary. I think she did it. Something ain't right here, man. I'm telling you.
I would hope whoever was watching this, that they would look deep into the whole situation of everything and keep an open mind about things, and just to know that there are always two sides to every story.
And now the time had come for Darlene to make her case. The courtroom was filled with tension in anticipation of a vigorous defense. But no one would get a chance to hear it.
I had asked several times, let me just get up there. And he kept, no, I don't think you need to do that, because regardless that you get up there, they're just going to twist everything you have to say.
To the surprise of the jury, and even Darlene, the defense rested its case without calling one single witness.
All of a sudden, he just says, we rest. So that was like a total, what are you doing?
Why didn't your defense attorney put any witnesses on the stand on your behalf?
Why he didn't put anybody up, I have no idea. It was like, are you kidding me? Because the way he was speaking, I was like, this is not what I was expecting. He would stutter and just, it was a joke. I have no idea what he was in his mind, where he thought he was going with all of this and why he chose to do this.
It took the jury only 5 hours to come back with a verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Darlene Gentry, guilty of the offense of murder as alleged in the indictment.
Darlene Gentry was sentenced to 60 years in prison for murdering her husband.
What was your reaction, Darlene, when the guilty verdict came down?
Honestly, I can't even tell you. I was in such a shock throughout the whole thing. It was a circus, the whole thing.
After her trial, Darlene immediately filed an appeal. She claimed the key evidence, the video of her at the pond, should never have been seen by the jury because the entire sting operation was a case of illegal entrapment. A judge ruled against her. The conviction would stand. Then, in February 2010, Darlene challenged her conviction, citing 15 grounds of official misconduct. Police and prosecutors forcefully deny all of Darlene's accusations.
We believe that things like the evidence being planted are absolutely bogus. If there's a hearing required, we'll be certainly glad to participate in it.
I didn't kill my husband. I loved my children, and I loved my family.
While Darlene serves her sentence, her in-laws are raising her 3 sons. The boys have no direct contact with their mother. I'm Paula Zahn. Join us next time when we're back on the case.
Thank you for watching Investigation Discovery on Demand. You're watching Investigation Discovery on Demand.
An elite school for the deaf.
Gallaudet University is a beacon of hope for all deaf people.
Becomes a campus stricken with fear. A student found murdered.
For a college, it was the equivalent of a home invasion style killing.
Shockingly, a fellow student was accused of the crime.
I'm wondering, what did I do to deserve this? I didn't do anything.
Then, 4 months later, a second attack.
Did you think he had struck again?
Was a killer living among them.
His eyes began to twinkle, and he began to smile.
I'm Paula Zahn, and tonight we're on the case in our nation's capital, where a dramatic mystery at a prestigious university would become every parent's worst nightmare. A center of learning and hope for deaf students would soon be a campus consumed by fear. Going to Gallaudet was a dream for Eric Plunkett, a young man from Minnesota. He had been born severely deaf and suffered from cerebral palsy. He embraced life with everything he had.
Even when he was tiny, he was always smiling. There's very few photos that we have of him where he's not smiling and just letting out that energy.
He really didn't let anything get in the way of his sense of adventure or exploration.
Nope. You know, traveling, being independent, those were the things that he really wanted.
When Eric was accepted at Gallaudet, it was one of the happiest days of his life.
What was Eric's reaction when he found out he got into Gallaudet?
Thrill, elation.
Jumping up and down, screaming up and down the hallways.
When his mother dropped him off at school, she told Eric, have a great time and be careful.
Were you worried about something?
Just the parental concern.
Sure.
Any parent dropping their kid off at college.
It's a scary time in all of our lives.
I'm not there to watch over you or check in with you, so be careful.
He said something like, "Don't worry about me, Mom.
I'll be okay.
I'll be okay."
Eric lived in the west wing of Cogswell Hall. He bonded with his neighbors. There was studious Ben Varner from San Antonio and the slightly older Joseph Mesa from Guam. He also became close to drama student Thomas Minch from New Hampshire.
What were your first impressions of Eric Plunkett?
I mean, I thought he was a cool guy.
You became fast friends, didn't you?
Yes, we did. We became really good friends.
Thomas Minch thought one of the endearing things about Eric was that he usually kept the door to his room wide open. He'd wave friends inside to share care packages from home or to show off the latest snapshots of his baby sister.
I remember going into his room to visit him, and he's like, "Oh, come here, look at the new picture, look at the new picture." And it was like every day, it was, "Oh, look at this new picture, look at the new picture we have." And it was very nice.
But one night, just a little more than a month after the semester had started, friends noticed Eric's door was closed. They were concerned.
A student comes to the resident assistant and tells the resident assistant Eric Plunkett is in that student's math class, and that student hadn't seen Eric Plunkett that day, which was unusual.
The resident assistant used a master key to open Eric's door. What he found was horrifying. Eric Plunkett was dead on the floor. Blood was everywhere. When campus security reported the crime, Washington, D.C. police flooded the campus.
There was just so many police officers, I couldn't even count. Saw the ambulances, the fire trucks. They had the yellow caution tape everywhere around the buildings.
The last time he saw his mother and stepfather, Eric had told them not to worry about him. Now, asleep in their bed, they woke up to a parent's worst nightmare.
What was the first hint that you got that something might have been wrong with Eric?
What was the hint? 2 uniformed police officers with a chaplain rapping loudly on our front door and the telephone ringing at the same time.
They had a phone number of a detective for us to contact for more information in Washington, D.C.
No, they didn't know any details.
They didn't know any details.
Back on campus, police did a quick investigation of Eric's room and knew immediately this was murder. Eric Plunkett, the thin young man with the big smile, had been beaten to death.
The violent nature of the death and the fact that for a college campus, it was the equivalent of a home invasion style killing. I think that really kind of unnerved people.
It's very rare that any crime takes place and there's absolutely no one who has any information that could be of help. If there's any information at all, whether you think it's important or not, step forward.
The west wing of Cogswell Hall was now a crime scene. Students were moved out for their own safety. Classes were suspended.
It was horrible. It was awful. I just remember it being awful. The students that had to leave the dorm, they couldn't go in and get anything. All of their books, all of their clothes, their underwear, their toothbrush, their money, everything was in their rooms and everything was locked down. So I would describe those students as homeless.
How strong was the sense of fear on campus the night that Eric Plunkett was found murdered?
I mean, of course there was a lot of fear going on campus. You know, no one really knew what was going on. And so everyone was very, very quiet. There was a lot of shock and confusion that evening.
And everyone had a theory about what had happened.
There was no other topic on campus. A lot of rumors were floating around. Maybe, somebody in the neighborhood around the campus had come in and for whatever reason had killed Eric Plunkett.
But it wouldn't have been easy for an outsider to sneak into Eric's dorm. Students needed ID cards to get into the residence halls, and 3 of the 4 campus gates were locked after 6 p.m. The 4th was manned by a security guard. An appalling and terrifying thought struck the students. Maybe the killer was someone they knew.
Everyone's looking at each other like, was it you? Was it you?
19-year-old Eric Plunkett had been found dead in his dorm room. His mother and stepfather grabbed the first plane they could, determined to find out exactly what had happened. When they arrived, what they discovered was a campus in shock.
There was just a palpable sense of fear, I think, walking around the campus. You could just feel that this was not the ordinary college campus. This was a campus that was afraid.
Everyone stayed in their own rooms. They stayed with their own small groups of friends. It was very quiet on campus, almost like the campus was dead that night.
But after dark, a group of students gathered at the student union.
They all had candles, and each one said something about Eric. It was very sad.
The morning after the candlelight vigil, Eric's parents met 2 students who hugged them and told them how sad they were that Eric had been killed. One of them was Joseph Mesa, Eric's across-the-hall neighbor. He was just one of hundreds of students who would offer them their condolences.
They all just wanted to tell us that they, even in that short amount of time, they had been touched by Eric.
While the campus grieved, up to 15 detectives worked the case in shifts.
At this point, we have a chair that was located in the room that we suspect was used in the incident.
An autopsy showed that Eric had been strangled from behind and then kicked in the head as he lay on the floor. By analyzing marks on his body and blood spatter in the room, investigators concluded that the killer had also pummeled Eric in a rage, striking him with a chair again and again.
Can you speculate from the blood evidence whether it is a crime of passion that's been committed?
Perhaps. Maybe in a case like this where you're seeing multiple impacts and no real clear reason other than anger or emotion, that may be consistent with a crime of passion.
Police were determined to figure out who could have been responsible for such intense violence. There was talk on campus that Eric's involvement in a gay fraternity might be connected to his murder.
There was a sense that Eric Plunkett was killed because he was gay.
And then a breakthrough in the investigation. A student told police about a fight Eric had had with his good friend Thomas Minch. Could that have led to murder?
Shortly before Eric died, you had an altercation with him. What happened?
We were hanging out, and he started making moves on me. And I'm like, no, I'm not interested. I didn't come for that. I came out to hang out with you.
After hearing the story, police brought Minch in for questioning. According to police documents, he became very nervous and started shaking and covering his face. What was he hiding? Minch seemed to have conflicting stories about when he had last seen Eric. But he did admit one thing, that he had touched Eric during their argument.
Did you push Eric to the floor?
No.
But that's not what the police report indicated. After a grueling 4-hour interrogation, the detective wrote that Minch admitted to assaulting Eric with his fists and knocking him to the ground. He was arrested on the spot.
They took me down, I guess it was the basement of the building. They fingerprinted me, took my picture, and I'm wondering, what did I do to deserve this? I didn't do anything.
In jail, Minch was put on a suicide watch. But elsewhere in police headquarters, investigators celebrated with a bottle of champagne. They now believe that the high-profile case was solved. The Gallaudet community seemed relieved as well.
It was relief. It was personal relief, I think. For me, I remember I drove home and I thought, gosh, finally they've caught someone. They've caught the criminal.
Police called Eric's family and told them about the confession.
What was your reaction?
It was a huge release of emotion. It's like, okay, good, excellent. Now we can move forward.
We were relieved because then we thought, well, maybe we'll find out why and what happened.
The next morning, as Thomas sat in a cell waiting to be arraigned for murder, prosecutors abruptly dropped the charges.
The sense in the office was that the arrest had come too soon, that the police had moved too quickly.
What the detective was calling a murder confession, prosecutors saw as an admission of little more than a fight between two friends, hardly enough to hold Thomas Minch as a suspect, let alone bring him to trial. Eric's mother was angry. Police had told her Minch had confessed.
Were you crushed when you heard Thomas Minch had been released because there wasn't sufficient evidence?
Yes. It was hard because we thought we'd get some answers and then we didn't.
Thomas Minch was ushered out of the courthouse through a back entrance. Although he was free to go, police kept up the pressure.
The spotlight did not get off of Thomas Minch. He very much was a suspect. The police officials were basically saying, you know what, rather than try a bad case, we're going to retreat and come back again on another day.
Minch was told he couldn't return to campus. His family came to pick up his belongings in the middle of the night. As Minch returned home to New Hampshire, the campus was still in a state of fear, worried that prosecutors had allowed a killer to walk free, and that he might strike again. Coming up, that terrible fear becomes a grim reality.
It was just an absolutely gut-wrenching moment that it happened again.
This was very active, very violent.
Meaning the victim put up a fight?
Absolutely.
Four months had passed since the murder of Eric Plunkett at Gallaudet University. After prosecutors had released their prime suspect, the investigation seemed to go cold. Back in Minnesota, Eric's mother was trying to cope with the heartbreak of losing her son.
Kathleen, you once told a reporter that the depths of your grief were indescribable.
Yes, but I was trying very hard to be strong for a lot of people.
I can recall times when she said, I can't cry. I can't cry in front of people. I'm like, that's what they want to see. They want to see that you're hurting. No, I can't do that. I can't do that. And she would not show emotion.
Instead, Kathleen focused on the investigation. Shortly after Eric's death, she had stumbled across what she thought might be a clue.
When did you find out that someone had used his credit card after his death?
It was after the first of the month when the statements came out. And Kathleen looked at the statement and noticed that there had been some charges. And then she looked at the dates and saw that there were a couple dates that happened after Eric was found dead. And so how could that be?
Police figured out that someone had tried to use the card more than 10 times after Eric's death. But by the time police had followed up on the lead, stores where purchases had been made had already recycled the security camera video. As fall turned to winter, life on campus seemed to return to normal. 12 new surveillance cameras had been ordered since Eric's murder to try to beef up security, but none had been installed.
There weren't any new developments. Things were not really changing.
But the life of Thomas Minch had changed forever. The once promising student was living at home, delivering pizzas.
I mean, I got really low. It got really bad. I remember the first few months was really tough.
And even though he had been released, Minch was still considered the prime suspect in the case. His friends started opening up about Minch's temper. They told police about the time they had seen him throw a trash can across the room in a fit of rage. And the FBI had found light brown hair on Eric's body. Could the hairs have belonged to Minch? Was this finally some concrete evidence linking him to the murder? 4 months after Eric's murder, he was summoned to Washington, D.C. to appear before a grand jury.
Describe to us what that experience was like.
Well, I thought, hopefully it's going to be really speedy and I can get this over with.
Minch's appearance before the grand jury did nothing to clear him as a suspect. He was dismissed as a witness and was scheduled to fly home later that night. But a shocking turn of events was about to throw the investigation into turmoil and make prosecutors wonder if Thomas Minch actually got on that plane. At 4:15 a.m., someone triggered the fire alarm in Gallaudet's Cogswell Hall. There was no fire, but students poured into the morning chill, all except for one.
Security told me that another student had been found murdered, and I just screamed.
It was horrific. It was just an absolutely gut-wrenching moment to get that phone call.
What the campus had feared most had happened again. Another student had been found murdered in the same residence hall where Eric Plunkett's body had been found 4 months earlier. This time, 19-year-old Ben Varner had been stabbed to death with a paring knife. The one-day investigators' prime suspect, Thomas Minch, had been in town. Another student had been murdered. A coincidence or evidence of a killer who wasn't going to stop?
We thought, oh my gosh, we better make sure he got on the plane when he was supposed to have gotten on the plane.
In fact, Minch had stayed over in Washington on the night Ben Varner was killed. But when he returned to New Hampshire the next day, police were waiting for him.
There was cops. They're banging on my door, and I'm like, okay. My grandparents were like, what's going on? We need to talk with Thomas because a second murder just happened. So now they're thinking it was me because it was the same day that I was there again.
Did you think that Thomas Minch had struck again?
I felt that somehow he was involved, yes. And because in my mind I already believed he had killed Eric, then to know that he was in town and Ben had been killed, I thought that he had done it again.
Back in Washington, D.C., a team of FBI technicians scoured the crime scene for evidence. And investigators were struck by the similarities between this killing and that of Eric Plunkett. Both students had been savagely attacked behind closed doors by a killer who had shown no mercy. Ben had been stabbed at least 15 times, his bloody hearing aid on the floor, his eyeglasses smashed.
Very sort of intimate violence, different than taking a gun and pointing it at someone, so it was, I think, particularly brutal.
Dr. Timothy Palmbach is a professor of forensic science specializing in crime scene analysis.
There's a fair amount of force, we'll call that impact spatter, and a lot of activity. So the very scene demonstrated that this was a very active, very violent, very involved case.
Meaning the victim put up a fight?
Absolutely.
As horrifying as the crime scene was, Ben Varner's blood-drenched dorm room also offered up countless clues to investigators. Crime scene analyst Peter Massey showed us how investigators had made their biggest discovery. Using a chemical spray that enhances blood stains, forensic investigators turned a ghostly track of blood into a pristine shoe print.
Well, if I can show you.
So within 5 to 10 seconds, if there is a shoe print, you're going to find
If there's
it.
a shoe print of blood, we'll find it.
The shoe print was so clear, the technician processing the Ben Varner crime scene was able to identify the shoe almost immediately.
Only one kind of sneaker made by Nike leaves that particular kind of impression, and that was a really valuable piece of information.
It was the Nike Air Max Cross Trainer. Ben hadn't been wearing Nikes, so the footprint belonged to the killer.
How accurate is this science? How dependable is it?
Well, like with fingerprints, if you can get this to be individualistic, it is very accurate. Depending on the individual wear patterns, marks on the soles of the shoes, they can be traced individually to that particular pair of shoes.
So would you compare this almost to the accuracy of a fingerprint?
Absolutely.
As investigators continued searching, hoping to find a pair of Nikes, they caught another break.
When the police searched the dumpster outside the dorm building, they found the murder weapon, and they also found a jogging jacket that had blood on it.
Investigators were anxious to see if any of the evidence would connect Thomas Minch to the murder.
Were you in the dorm of Ben Varner the day you went back for the grand jury testimony?
I wasn't even close to the campus when I went to D.C.
Minch told police he could prove he wasn't on campus when Ben was murdered.
I filled out, the statement of where I was, where I went to the museum, went to the restaurant, put all of that down with the receipts, proof on the time.
But at this point, not even Minch thought anyone would believe him.
I really gave up hope. I was done.
Coming up, police close in on a killer again.
At this point, he knew that it was crumbling down around him.
With fewer than 2,000 students all sharing a common challenge, Gallaudet University is a school where everyone knows each other. But in the space of just 4 months, 2 students had been murdered in their own dorm rooms. A dark cloud was now hanging over the close-knit community. Would the cold-blooded killer strike again?
Each murder consisted of a series of incredibly violent acts. Choking, stabbing, bludgeoning, kicking, stomping.
Thomas Minch was still the prime suspect in Eric Plunkett's murder. Now, he was a suspect in the murder of yet another student, a young man named Ben Varner.
Did you really think you were going to be charged?
I really refused to believe it because I knew where I was. There was no proof of anything of me involved in that situation. I'd wake up crying and upset, and it's like, what do? I've gone through so much through this. It was really tough.
Inside Ben Varner's dorm room, police scientists had isolated forensic evidence. Blood spatter, the killer's footprint. In a dumpster nearby, investigators discovered a knife and a jacket covered in blood.
It was an actual item of clothing that they believe was involved, and they asked people if they could identify who the owner was.
And then another breakthrough. Police figured out that Ben's wallet and checkbook were missing.
The detectives immediately started looking to see whether Ben's credit cards or checks had been used, and were able to determine that someone had cashed a check on Ben's account after the time when we believed Ben had been killed.
Unlike Eric Plunkett's case, when police had waited too long before tracking down who had used his stolen credit card, this time police acted quickly and were able to get security video from the bank. Would they be able to catch the killer on video, cashing one of Ben's checks?
They were able to go to the bank, get the videotape, and it was clearly Joseph Mesa who was on the tape cashing the check.
Remember Joseph Mesa, the concerned student from Guam who had lived across the hall from Eric Plunkett? He also lived a few doors down from Ben Varner. It was an incredible break in the case. and a stunning surprise. Back on Guam, Mesa had become something of a local hero.
In the area where he lived, he was somebody everybody looked up to.
He kind of would talk to children about, there's a bigger world out there for you outside of Guam. If you're deaf, don't let it bother you. You can come to Gallaudet. Look at me as a role model.
He was an unlikely suspect, but there was his face captured on big surveillance video, cashing a check for $650 after Ben Varner had been killed. And soon, there was more evidence. Mesa had already filled out a police questionnaire denying that the bloody ski jacket was his. But a friend told police he recognized it and said it, in fact, belonged to Joseph Mesa.
That was a very powerful moment where we knew we had to get a search warrant and look at his dorm room and see if we could find the sneakers, for example, that we knew had been worn during the crime.
There they were, Nike Air Max cross trainers stashed in his closet and stained with blood. The sneakers that had made the bloody shoe print at the crime scene.
I think at this point, Mr. Mesa knew that it was crumbling down around him.
Joseph Mesa walked to the office of campus security and turned himself in for the murder of Ben Varner. For Thomas Minch, the student who had been under suspicion for many months, the news about Mesa lifted a burden that had become almost unbearable. Investigators called Thomas to let him know that he had finally been cleared. And not just in Ben Varner's death. Lab results had come back showing that the hairs found on Eric's body didn't belong to Minch.
I walked over to my parents' bedroom. My father was sleeping. I know he worked that morning. I woke him up and I said, "We're done." He says, "What do you mean?" So I explained what happened. All of us started crying.
On an emotional level, what did these false charges filed against you for murder cost you?
I lost who I was. I had this person, I had my hopes, I had this dream, this goal, and I was going for that. I was on the path. And all this happened, I lost who I was.
Eric Plunkett's parents were lost too. It had taken investigators only a few weeks to identify the killer of Ben Varner, a case that was similar in so many ways to their son's murder. Now they wondered, would Ben's killers have answers for them? They were almost afraid to hope.
When they had arrested Joseph Mesa, I remember I didn't have much of a reaction. And I remember telling you that I'll wait and see. I've been down this road before.
Coming up, the shocking details of the Gallaudet murders in the killer's own words.
I think just the detail of it was bone-chilling.
Want more on the case? Go to investigationdiscovery.com/Paula Zahn and view more exclusive interviews and behind-the-scenes video. Gallaudet student Joseph Mesa had just turned himself in. With an interpreter relaying his chilling words, he began to tell police a terrifying tale of crime and obsession. As Mesa told investigators a gruesome story of murder, the voice of the female translator seemed strangely at odds with the killer's disturbing confession.
I knew that if I held it in, it would get worse and worse. And it would end up worse than just admitting what had happened.
Mesa revealed to investigators the true horror of what he had done to Ben Varner.
Did you leave the knife in his head?
Mm-hmm.
Until you came back later?
Yes.
I think just the detail of it was bone-chilling. He really went into exhaustive detail.
Without any hint of emotion, Mesa described killing Ben Varner.
I walked over and I saw a knife right under the microwave. I saw a knife sitting right under there.
It was a paring knife Ben's mother had given him to slice the apples he loved to eat while studying.
And I had the knife and I got ready and I stabbed him. And stabbed him until he died.
Investigators asked Mesa why he had killed Ben. His response was alarmingly cavalier.
Why did you continue to stab him? What was your intention?
I stabbed him in the neck. I took it out, he looked up at me and I just felt guilty. I knew he was gonna report me right away. And I thought, I'm gonna have to kill him so that he dies, and that way he can't report me to the RA or anything.
I'm going to show you a knife, and you tell me if this knife is similar.
Yes.
Dr. Huguenet evaluated the confessed killer over a 5-month period. He believes Mesa was thrilled by what he had done and enjoyed confessing to all the horrific details.
He relished the opportunity to relive this in telling what he had done.
Oh, I forgot to add, when I killed him, I kicked him in his head 2 times.
Mesa was so unconcerned about the evidence, instead of getting rid of the t-shirt he had stolen from Ben, he decided to hang it up in his own closet.
It's a gruesome analogy, perhaps, but you know, if you like baseball and you have a souvenir from the game, you tuck it away. When you take the souvenir out, you're reminded of the baseball game.
Mesa spoke for 2 hours about Ben Varner's murder, but now one final question from the interrogator would lead to a shocking admission.
It would be a good idea if you have anything else on your conscience, then you tell us about it now.
Also, Eric Plunkett, I also did that one too.
Mesa admitted that he had also killed Eric Plunkett. For Eric's family, the news was particularly cruel. They had fond memories of him as the student who had hugged them and offered his condolences after Eric's death.
When you look back on that moment now, what does that tell you about Joseph Mesa?
It tells me that he had absolutely no feeling about what he had done, about the impact of what he had done. He didn't care about anything.
The way Mesa described it, he never thought twice about killing his across-the-hall neighbor, the friend whose cerebral palsy made him such an easy target.
I knew he was kind of weak. I knew that he kind of limped a little, so I thought I was pretty strong. I didn't think he could really be that strong.
Mesa told investigators he had thought about how to kill Eric for days. And on the evening of September 28th, he struck.
And I put my arm around his neck, kept holding it there continuously. And then he breathed slower and slower. Then he lay down. Then I kicked him, and I used the chair and hit him on his face.
Mesa even demonstrated for police how he had held the chair and then repeatedly struck a helpless Eric with it. Then he offered one more startling admission. He said he had tried to frame Thomas Minch, that he was the student who reported that Thomas and Eric had been fighting.
Did you participate in making sure that he was the person that took the beef, took the role for this?
Yes.
Mesa's confession was so comprehensive, it seemed to answer every possible question. But there was still a long way to go before the Gallaudet murder investigations could be closed. The families of the 2 victims wondered if anyone could have predicted Mesa's murderous behavior, if warning signs had been overlooked. During one session with forensic psychologist Mitchell Huguenet, Mesa acted out a telling scene.
He stood up out of his chair in the middle of the interview, gesticulating, putting kittens into a bag, putting the bag on the ground in front of him, and stomping on their heads. And he stomped his feet like this, and his eyes began to twinkle, and he began to smile.
Mesa told Huguenet he had killed animals when he was a young boy. The psychologist noted that as a classic feature in a profile for a future serial killer. Back on campus, many people wondered why the investigation hadn't zeroed in on Joseph Mesa within days of the first murder. Eric Plunkett's credit card records led right to Mesa's door. It turns out police had failed to do a routine inventory of what was missing in Eric's room. The lead detective never figured out that Eric's wallet had been stolen.
Wouldn't you think one of the first things they would have tried to determine was whether something was missing from Eric's room, his wallet? It's standard procedure to look at one's bank records and one's credit cards records to see if that reveals any clues.
Those were the things that they did right away after Ben was killed. And that's why they were able to narrow in on Joseph Mesa so quickly, because they did use kind of the standard investigative process. I don't know why some of those things were not used in Eric's case.
I think that a lot of people felt that Ben Varner could be alive today had they noticed some of these clues in Eric Plunkett's investigation. These were fatal errors that were made.
The D.C. Metropolitan Police Department refused our request for an interview and denied us access to public records. In a written statement, it said, hindsight is 20/20. Is it possible that mistakes were made? Yes, of course. We are deeply saddened by the murders of students within our community. Trying to avoid a trial, Joseph Mesa's attorneys argued that he was not mentally fit and couldn't be held responsible for his actions. But prosecutors charged him with 2 counts of premeditated murder and argued that Mesa had murdered for money, pure and simple. At the trial, Mesa's lawyers laid out a bizarre insanity defense. They claimed that their client suffered from hallucinations that compelled him to kill.
He would see hands that had black gloves on them, and they would be making signs to him to do things that were involved violence.
And the story got even stranger. In Mesa's supposed hallucination, the sinister instructions were transmitted directly to him by black gloves being worn by the popular professional wrestler, The Undertaker.
After a while, he couldn't resist it anymore, and he succumbed to the hallucinations.
But Mesa's convoluted insanity defense worried Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Collins. Could the man who confessed to 2 horrible crimes convince a jury he wasn't responsible for them?
I think the natural human reaction is to assume that he must have been crazy.
But on the eve of the trial, the prosecution made a critical discovery. Mesa had actually written to his girlfriend telling her he planned to fake an insanity defense.
And then in a really sort of bone-chilling moment in the letter say, I'm going to say this happened, it isn't true, but it might work.
The prosecutor used the letter in the courtroom to argue that Mesa's insanity defense was nothing more than a cynical con, and the jury believed her. It took less than 3 hours to convict him of both murders. Joseph Mesa was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison. Mesa's conviction was a final vindication for Thomas Minch. For Eric Plunkett's parents, Mesa's conviction was the beginning of a new life too, facing a future without their son.
There's really no change as far as how we feel. No sense of peace.
The light of their lives had been extinguished, and nothing would ever change that. But as time has passed, it's not the way Eric died It's the way he lived that they try to remember.
What did Eric bring into all of your lives?
Love, pride, happiness.
A lot of pride.
Someone to see who can set a goal and achieve it. Love for other people.
He definitely made me proud. That's a big part of what he gave me.
What do you miss most about him?
Having him come in the front door and say, "Hi, Mom, I'm home."
On the day of his funeral, Kathleen saw Eric's college admission essay for the first time. It turns out that he had dedicated it to her, calling his mother a hero and the person he most admired. I'm Paula Zahn. See you here next time when we're back on the case.
Thank you for watching Investigation Discovery on Demand. You're watching Investigation Discovery on Demand.
She may have sent her best friend home with a killer.
I just told him, drop her off, and if anything happens to her, I'm coming after you.
But something did happen.
She had puncture wounds on her throat. She'd been covered with an accelerant and set on fire. They found evidence of sexual trauma.
Cops zeroed in on 2 local boys as suspects.
I did not harm that girl in no way.
I kept telling them, y'all got the wrong guy. Y'all got the wrong guy.
Do you feel a sense of guilt that you let her go home alone that night?
I would rather if it happened to both of us than her be alone.
I'm Paula Zahn. Tonight, we're on the case in Bowling Green, Kentucky, where a college freshman was found badly burned and barely alive in her dorm room. The brutality of the attack left many on campus wondering who could have been so twisted. What investigators uncovered would tear a town apart.
Just like everyone else, you get to college and you just want to kind of have fun.
Danica Jackson and Katie Autry were roommates and best friends at Western Kentucky University, a bustling state college about an hour's drive from Nashville, Tennessee. Their freshman year was about to end. Summer break was just a week away. But any thoughts of final exams or summer vacations disappeared when a fire alarm went off in the middle of the night. It was coming from room 214 in Poland Hall, Katie and Danica's room. A friend at the dorm called Danica with the news.
I said to her, I was like, well, okay, my dorm room's on fire. Where is Katie? She said, I don't know. I'm like, that's not right. I was like, something's wrong. If she's not with you, she's in there. She's in that room.
Students were quickly evacuated from the building, and when firefighter Bob Sanborn entered the room, he was met by a horrible scene.
I noticed something glistening in what I thought was a pile of laundry on the bed, and as I moved in, I swept away the debris, and when I looked again, I saw this person laying there. When I looked closer, I saw the chest rise. I shoved the rest of the debris away. I swept her up and got to the door.
It was a very young, very small female with burns over a large percentage of her body. And she had no clothes on.
Outside the building, dazed students waited in their pajamas while firefighters tried to get oxygen into Katie.
I hit the bypass on my mask, and I just pressed it down on her face as hard as I could. My job at that moment was to keep her alive, to get her to breathe. If I could get her to breathe on her own, then, you know, as far as my world went, she's gonna live. And I was able to get her breathing on her own.
Katie was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. her roommate Danica made it back to the dorm at 5 a.m.
I just remember seeing her bed, and it was just black in the center, like a big gooey black mess, and up the wall it was black all the way.
Firefighters found Katie with her feet bound together with the cord of a curling iron. A t-shirt was knotted tightly around her neck. The fire alarm in the room had been torn off the ceiling. It was clear this was a deliberate criminal attack. But conditions in the dorm room made it difficult for investigators to piece together exactly what had happened.
The fire department had been in there and put many gallons of water on the scene, so the scene itself didn't give us much direction. The evidence had been pretty much destroyed.
Police then turned their attention to anyone who had contact with Katie the previous night. They knew she had gone to a party at the Pike fraternity house.
The roommate of Miss Autry, Danica, was interviewed. So that led us back to where she had started from that night at the Pike house at the party.
Take us back to the night of Saturday, May 3rd. Was it a typical night for the two of you?
Yeah, we got up, got dressed, went out and hung out in a friend's room for a little while, pre-drink, and then just went to the party.
According to Danica, Katie had been drinking heavily before she went to the Pike frat house, and at the party, she got into an ugly fight with a boy she had been seeing.
I know that she slapped him across the face in front of everybody, and she was a little bit, I guess, out of hand.
What was she so mad about?
He would make a commitment to her, and he had been seeing another girl, or I'm coming after you.
Even though he was a designated driver, sending her drunk friend home with the boy worried Danica. So she entered the license plate number of the truck into her cell phone.
Why would you have taken down the license number? What were you feeling at that point?
Just in case something happened.
Danica was being cautious, but didn't really expect any trouble.
I knew exactly what she was gonna do. She was gonna go in the room, go wash her face, and she was gonna get in the bed. It's exactly what she did every night. I mean, it's Bowling Green. Nothing happens there, you know.
But something did happen. And someone did the unthinkable to Katie Autry, leaving her in a desperate struggle for her life. Her injuries revealed just how depraved the attack was.
She had puncture wounds on her throat. She'd been covered with an accelerant and set on fire. They later discovered that the accelerant was hairspray. They found evidence of sexual trauma. It's kind of unbelievable what the injuries she sustained, and she's still alive.
In critical condition and with third-degree burns over 40% of her body, Katie was airlifted to the burn unit at Vanderbilt University Hospital in Nashville. The only thing her best friend Danica could do now was wait, worry, and wonder how it all came to this.
Do you feel a sense of guilt that you let her go home alone that night?
I would have rather gone with her. Even if something would have happened, I would rather if it happened to both of us than her be alone.
With little physical evidence, police tried to figure out who had attacked Katie Autry. The college freshman was in the hospital, hooked up to a ventilator, unable to speak, and fighting for her life.
They told us that we couldn't touch her or anything, and when we went in the room, they had a light shining right directly on her face, and she looked like a little baby doll laying there. And my mom just lost it. She just started screaming for her to wake up. She just wanted her to wake up.
Barbie White was only 16 years old at the time. but she remembers just how serious Katie's injuries were.
They had to remove all the skin from her neck to her knees because she had 3rd and 4th degree burns all over her.
While Katie's family stood by her bedside, police in Bowling Green were trying to move the investigation forward. They questioned Danica and got an important clue. Before the fire alarm went off, Danica had called their dorm room to check on Katie. What Katie told her was troubling.
All I remember is her saying, "Danica, there's someone in our room." I was like, "What do you mean there's somebody in our room? Who is it?" "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know who it is? You know, get up, look at him. Who is it?" And she handed the phone to whoever it was. And I said, "What are you doing in our room?" I said, "Oh, I'm the boy that brought her home. She threw up in my truck. I just wanted to make sure she was okay." And I was like, "She's fine. Turn her, make sure she's on her stomach when you leave. I'll be there soon. She's fine. Get out of our room."
That's when Danica said she heard another voice. There seemed to be a second man in the room.
I heard the door close to her room, and I could hear her saying, "Just leave me alone, just leave me alone. I just want to go to sleep." The one male was talking on the phone to me, and then there was another male voice in the background. And then the phone hung up, so.
So you never talked to this second person in the room, or who you thought was the second male in the room?
No, I never talked to him directly, but it was a guy.
The phone call in itself was pretty disturbing, but once you got hung up on, what did you do next?
Nothing. I thought, he'll leave. He'll leave. I told him to leave. He'll leave. And I really thought he would. I, let him know, "Hey, I'll be home soon," thinking, surely nobody's dumb enough to do something to somebody if they think that the other person's gonna come home.
Before she got back to the dorm, Danica got a call about the fire. Police also questioned Ryan Payne, the fraternity pledge and designated driver who had driven Katie home in a truck that night. He told police there was a boy he knew from the neighboring town of Scottsville who was already in his truck that night, someone named Stephen Souls.
When he got to the truck, Stephen Souls was passed out due to his drunkenness. Stephen Souls is in the middle, Miss Autry's on the right side of the passenger seat, and of course, Ryan is driving.
Investigators wanted to hear from Stephen Souls. It took days to track him down, but police finally brought him in for questioning. Cameras were rolling when Souls described the car ride to Katie's dorm.
She was drunk, I could tell, but she could tell she was kind of emotional about something. She just wanted to get to her dorm room or whatever, just chill.
Souls said he got out of the truck with Katie, and then she invited him upstairs.
Me and her went into the room. Be a little bit more specific. When we get up, bro, we start kissing, messing around a little bit in the bed, you know what I'm saying? We started messing around or whatever. And then, we started to do it or whatever, you know what I'm saying? That's big. Yeah. Okay.
But Souls says when the alcohol got the better of Katie, everything changed.
She goes to the bathroom and starts throwing up. She comes back out. She's like, "I'm sick." I sit there and talk to her for a little while, whatever. And then I just got up and left.
Souls claim he got to a friend's house at 3:30 a.m., half an hour before the fire alarm went off. But Detective Pickett wasn't buying it.
Listen, I know you're nervous. I know you're scared to death. Man, I want to help you, but I know something went bad. I don't know what happened, but I know that something went bad up there. I want you to tell me.
Anything, I know that I was up there, but I did not harm that girl in no way. I can promise you that.
Souls' story just wasn't adding up.
He was very quiet, withdrawn to himself. nervous. He kept putting his head in his hands. He definitely had something he was hiding that he needed to talk about.
So Detective Pickett pushed Souls harder.
She completely backed out of me and said, so what went back? I didn't hurt. Stephen, if you didn't do anything, if you hadn't done it, don't cover up for nobody. Okay? So when I was leaving, there was a dude out in the hall. I don't know if he went in there and done it or what, but I didn't hurt that girl.
Feeling the pressure, Souls asked for a cigarette, took a deep breath, and prepared to tell detectives a story that would point the finger at someone else. Coming up, who was the other man in the room? And was he responsible for the attack on Katie?
That's a pretty serious thing when you strike a woman. Just a few days after Katie Autry was attacked, police had identified and interviewed their prime suspect. Stephen Souls was now on the verge of telling investigators everything that happened that night.
Katie Autry was barely clinging to life. 3 days had passed since the college freshman had been assaulted, raped, and set on fire. There was little doctors could do.
She was such a fighter, though. She didn't want to give up. Her heart rate would drop, and she'd bring it back up. And it would drop again, and she'd bring it back up. You know, we all wanted her to live so much. It was a hard fight on her.
After a brief but courageous battle, Katie Autry passed away. She was just 18 years old.
She was an amazing person. Katie was very special to all of us.
While Katie's family and friends mourned her loss, her case became a homicide investigation, and whoever killed her would likely be facing the death penalty. Police were focusing on Stephen Souls, the young man who admitted to being in Katie's dorm room the night of the attack.
Stephen began saying he only had sexual relations with Miss Autry. I felt like Mr. Souls was to the point that he just needed some hard evidence against him.
To push Souls, Detective Pickett used a time-tested interrogator's ploy. He tried to trick Souls into thinking there was solid evidence against him. Pickett made cards using his own fingerprints, saying they came from the dorm room, and then he questioned Souls about them.
I said, who do you think these fingerprints are? And he says, well, they're mine. And I also had made a mock videotape like that there had been surveillance cameras on the dorm. And I said, who do you think's on the tape? And he says, well, me.
Pickett felt Souls was now vulnerable, but if he was expecting a confession, he was badly mistaken. Instead, Souls said there was someone else in the room that night.
We was in there messing around or whatever, we was having sex. Buddy of mine coming out of love.
For the first time, Souls mentioned the name Luke. He was talking about Lucas Goodrum, a friend who had gone to the fraternity party with him.
I guess he talked to her at the party. I don't know. He come in and seen what we was doing. You know, he wanted to get something to him. You know, he talked to her, whatever, stuff like that. But she went down with it. And this thing I know, she turns crazy. Tell me what turned crazy. He just got forceful with it.
Souls went on to tell police a harrowing story. He said he watched Lucas Goodrum rape Katie, and that while he witnessed the whole attack, he did nothing to stop it.
I just didn't know what to do. I was just standing there.
Souls insisted that he left the room before the fire was started, but he said he saw Lucas spraying Katie's bed and her body with hairspray.
All I can remember is getting in the like that, spraying her.
Despite his disturbing account, a decision was made to let Stephen Souls go home that day.
We didn't arrest him. As long as he was cooperating, we were letting him stay out.
Police immediately turned their attention to Lucas Goodrum. The 21-year-old was from Scottsville, the same town Souls was from. Lucas was no stranger to police there. He had even gotten into a violent altercation with his girlfriend before going to the frat party on the night Katie was attacked.
What happened that night?
We got into a fight. We got into it, and I threw a cell phone and hit her.
You laugh when you say that. That's
Yeah.
a pretty serious thing when you strike a woman.
I'm not really thinking it was funny, but I didn't hit her. I was not meaning to hit her. I was meaning to break her phone.
But according to a statement Lucas's girlfriend gave police, his intent and his actions were vicious.
She stated, quote, she tried to leave. He slapped her and pushed her on the bed. He then straddled her and struck her twice more in the face.
No, I've never seen that. I never heard that from her either.
Did that ever happen?
Huh? No.
So what did happen?
I mean, I tried to keep her from leaving because she'd been drinking. And I sat on her, and while she was in her car, to keep her from leaving, that was it. And we had an argument.
Do you admit you used excessive force?
No, I didn't use excessive force with her. I sat on top of her because I weighed more. And
Did you try to choke her?
No, I'm not a choker. I ain't never choked nobody.
The divorced father of one had a number of domestic violence complaints and restraining orders filed against him by his ex-wife, LaDonna.
Do you understand that when you put all these things together, a picture emerges of you of a guy who's violent towards women?
I'm not going to accept that because I wasn't the greatest guy in the world, but I wasn't bad either.
The allegations of violence against women made the attack on Katie Autry that night seem plausible. But Lucas believed there was another factor working against him, a bitter history between his family and the police.
And that town's a little different because my stepdad and who my stepdad's family was.
Why are you making the distinction of your stepdad and who your stepdad was and how that might affect how law enforcement reacted to you?
Well, that mattered a whole lot. His grandfather owned the town, basically, and they all knew who I was.
Lucas's stepfather was an heir to the Dollar General Corporation, a multi-million-dollar retail chain with more than 300 stores in Kentucky alone. But his stepfather also had a troubled relationship with the police. In 1993, he killed a retired police officer in a drunk driving accident. He served 7 months in jail. But police say they weren't interested in Lucas's family history. They were focused on his actions the night of the attack on Katie Autry. After hearing Stephen Souls' story, police took Lucas into custody. They immediately took DNA samples. Lucas assumed he was in trouble for the fight with his girlfriend.
They didn't explain nothing to me until I got the post to Kentucky State Police.
What were you doing while all these samples were being taken?
I was asking questions. I was trying to get them to tell me why I was there. I mean, I wasn't just sitting there calmly. I was pissed off that they was doing this. I was like, what the hell are y'all doing? And I think I made a comment to one of the cops. I was like, all this for domestic violence.
Coming up, Lucas Goodrum angrily denies the charges against him. Will investigators be able to prove them?
He showed no compassion. I just believe he was being totally deceitful.
The murder of Katie Autry sent shockwaves through the college town of Bowling Green, Kentucky. People were scared, outraged, and demanding justice. Police already had a suspect, but he said someone else was.
Anytime at that point, did you go over the podium? To where? The podium house. Podium? Oh, I don't even know where it's at. No, I mean, I didn't. Absolutely. I'm absolutely sure 100% crossed my heart to die. I did not. I swear to God.
What was your reaction when you heard these investigators saying, we want to talk to you about this murder and we think you killed Katie Autry?
I was just, like I said, I was befuddled and confused. I was like, what the heck is going on? And I was like, y'all are crazy. But they kept saying that they had somebody saying that I did it. Somebody saying that, and I didn't know who it was. I didn't know who it was.
Apparently the person who was pointing the finger at me, they had something to do with it, because I did not have nothing to do with it.
The person accusing Lucas was Stephen Souls, the other suspect who'd already admitted he was in the room with Katie that night. And police weren't relying on his word alone to go after Lucas. Because of Katie's best friend, Danica, police believe there was a second perpetrator.
Investigators were pretty certain there were two people involved because of what you described in the phone conversation, right? With Katie telling you there's somebody in the room.
I heard another guy, and I kept insisting, like, there's two, there's two, there's two.
Lucas was steadfast in proclaiming his innocence.
Man, it's crazy. It's crazy if somebody with a finger at me. If somebody was taking me off the law, man, I don't know. I don't hate nobody that much.
But police thought he was lying, and they believed allegations that he'd been violent with women in the past made him all the more suspicious.
I'm not capable of doing something like that, dude. Not even halfway capable of doing something.
Everybody's always capable of doing something. It just depends on what their pushes or button they do.
Yeah, see, that's me. I'm pretty damn fine.
So when it comes to it?
No, always comes to women, then. I had two things like that happen to me in my life. 2 times this happened to me.
That was 2 to me.
Police wanted to know everything Lucas did the night Katie was killed, starting with the fraternity party.
Sure you didn't dance with her on the phone?
No, sir. No, sir. All she did was walk by and she rubbed on my stomach. I don't think she walked by.
So what'd you think about that?
Huh? I thought she was drunk.
Lucas told police he got a ride from Ryan Payne, the same designated driver who had already taken Katie to her dorm, but said he was dropped off at his car, which was in the parking lot of a bowling alley called Southern Lanes. He says after that, he went straight home to Scottsville.
Let me tell you something. I know you went to Southern Lanes to get your car. And I know where you went after you went to Southern Lanes, but you didn't go to Scott.
Yes, sir, I did.
Lucas stuck to his story, so Pickett tried to trip him up by using the same technique he had used on Stephen Souls. Pickett told Lucas he had surveillance video of him at Katie's dorm, and that his fingerprints were found in her room.
The fingerprint before you tell me how in the world that your fingerprints ended up in that girl's room.
What? I don't know anybody. Well, let me see the tapes. You already know what's on. No, I don't. I'm 100% confident, man. You run a test. Ain't me. Y'all look at the wrong person.
He was cocky. He was simply cocky. He didn't act like that he cared what happened to Miss Autry at all. He showed no compassion, and I just believe he was being totally deceitful.
Investigators couldn't get a confession out of Lucas Goodrum, but they believed what Stephen Souls had already told them was enough. They ended the interrogation and arrested Lucas on the spot.
What was your reaction to hearing the words, "You're arrested"?
I was angry. I was kind of, I kept, asking them, telling them, y'all got the wrong guy, everything. But they wouldn't listen. I mean, they would not listen. They wouldn't say much.
What were the words they used? Did they just simply say, "You're under arrest"?
Yeah, you're under arrest for capital murder.
While Lucas sat in the Warren County Jail, police brought Stephen Souls in for more questioning. They paid close attention to his body language.
He couldn't make eye contact with me when he answered his questions. He would place his head in his hands.
Souls started to elaborate on his accusations against Lucas Goodrum. He demonstrated exactly how he said Lucas had carried out the attack on Katie.
He was like, "You're gonna give me some." He said, "I'll hurt you or I'll hurt your family if you don't shut the up." You show me with your hands how he's holding her. When he starts hitting the pillow or whatever, he rips her shirt off of her and rips her underwear off. And that's when he just pulled his pants down and put the condom on.
Every new detail looked bad for Lucas Goodrum. But Stephen Souls' story also made police more suspicious about him. Souls had originally said he had consensual sex with Katie, then called a friend and got a ride home before the fire was set, but that alibi didn't check out. So detectives kept turning up the pressure, and Souls kept changing his story. And then suddenly, he broke. Stephen Souls offered police a stunning confession. He admitted that he had raped Katie Autry, but he refused to take full responsibility for his actions. He said Lucas Goodrum forced him to do it.
You makes me do that or whatever, and then why don't you do it? Makes me have sex with him.
He said he was scared of Lucas and what Lucas could do because Lucas's family had a lot of money, and that he was afraid that Lucas would hurt his family.
Souls kept blaming Lucas Goodrum, but in doing so, he was also acknowledging his own role in the crime, including setting the fire that killed Katie.
He admitted to spraying her down with hairspray, putting a Vaseline-type grease on the doorknob so it couldn't be opened.
Souls went on to describe how he had stolen and then hidden Katie's jewelry, something police didn't know anything about.
He then told me that if we would let him go back to Scottsville, he would show us the jewelry that he hid at his grandmother's. Upon arriving back to Scottsville, he took us over to a concrete block wall, and down inside the wall, we shined a flashlight and we could see the stolen jewelry at the bottom of it.
Police had heard and seen enough. Stephen Souls was arrested for his role in Katie Autry's murder. 2 suspects were now in custody. One who had admitted to involvement in the horrible crime, another who insisted he was innocent. Police were confident that both of them were guilty. For Danica Jackson, the arrests were a chance to get answers for herself and justice for her best friend.
What was your reaction to the 2 arrests for the murder of Katie?
Just relieved that finally maybe I'll know what actually happened and that they'll be punished.
Coming up, the heart-wrenching Katie Autry murder trial.
It was like they murdered Katie all over again. It was like reliving her death a second time.
Want more on the case? Go to investigationdiscovery.com/PaulaZahn and view more exclusive interviews and behind-the-scenes video. Lucas Goodrum and Stephen Souls were both in jail after being arrested for Katie Autry's murder. The 2 boys from Scottsville, Kentucky ran in the same circles, but were they really partners in crime? Just days after his arrest, Lucas Goodrum learned that it was Stephen Souls who had implicated him in Katie Autry's murder.
At what point did you find out that he had implicated you in the crime?
My lawyers told me that he implicated me, and he's trying to put it all off on me, so.
What was your reaction?
My reaction was, he's lying, get the DNA and I'll prove to you.
DNA testing proved that Stephen Souls had raped Katie Autry. But investigators still had no physical evidence connecting Lucas to the crime. Their case was relying on the story Souls had told them. 2 months after being arrested, 21-year-old Lucas Goodrum and 20-year-old Stephen Souls were indicted. They were charged with capital murder. Both faced the death penalty. After months behind bars, Souls accepted a deal from prosecutors. In exchange for his testimony against Lucas, the state would spare him the death penalty. Now prosecutors focused on their case against Lucas Goodrum. Lucas's family spared no expense in his defense. Private investigator Charlie Somm spent 18 months researching the case for them.
It's a capital case. The defense team knew that he had everything to lose. His mother started a website, and she actually asked and offered a reward for information regarding the real killer.
Lucas's trial was set for March 2005, almost 2 years after his arrest. It was moved to a town 70 miles north of Bowling Green, because the case had received so much media attention.
The trial, it was a hot ticket in Owensboro. It was Lucas's trial, but it was kind of the first time you could really hear Stephen, and it was the first time you could hear Luke.
Lucas's defense team prepared for a tough battle.
In Kentucky, you have to get past, well, a lot of people think where there's smoke, there's fire. And, you know, why would they have charged this guy if they didn't think he was guilty? So that's my biggest hurdle, is to start getting this jury. You got to think only about the proof in this case.
It was an extremely emotional trial. Prosecutors made sure the jury wouldn't forget about Katie Autry and the depravity of the attack. In a hushed courtroom, one of the doctors who treated her broke down during his testimony.
Most of the burns were third degree, meaning Autry.
Prosecutors gave the jury reasons why Lucas's DNA wasn't found at the crime scene. They said he wore a condom when he raped Katie. They also argued that the extensive water and fire damage in the room destroyed any other physical evidence.
Sprinklers pouring, water's flowing out into the hall. That sprinkler ran for over 45 minutes. What's the primary crime scene? There's the body of Katie Autry. You all saw the pictures. Nothing survived.
The prosecution's case had been built almost exclusively around Stephen Soul's accusations. So when the defense got its turn, it aggressively attacked his credibility.
The impression I got from Stephen's testimony was that here was a man who had already admitted guilt and was basically going through the motions.
The defense zeroed in on the fact that Souls had told police several different versions of events that night.
He couldn't keep his stories straight.
And witnesses took the stand who claimed Souls had a criminal history that included setting fires.
He said, "Run down there, I'm about to blow the truck up." And I was scared to death.
How did he blow it up?
He had a can and a rag. I don't know what it was. I think it was lighter fluid or something, I don't know.
The defense team argued that despite the water and fire damage, there was in fact an overwhelming amount of evidence left in Katie's room. And while DNA testing proved Stephen Souls raped Katie, there was absolutely no DNA or other physical evidence linking Lucas to the crime.
94 hairs, for example, were collected in this case, which is a lot. There was many hairs in the room, but of most importance, there was 4 hairs that were located in Katie's hands. What they were able to do was able to exclude, through microscopic examination, these hairs did not belong to Lucas Goodrum.
Then Lucas's defense team addressed his alibi. On the night of the murder, Lucas had gone to the frat party after having a fight with his girlfriend. Lucas claimed when he left the party, he got a ride to his car and made a quick stop at a gas station before going home. The defense presented a receipt from the gas station showing that someone had purchased $4 of gas and a soda at approximately 2:40 in the morning, the same purchase Lucas had described. Defense attorneys said their timeline proved Lucas couldn't have been at the crime scene. They argued that nothing Stephen Souls said or no evidence presented by the prosecution could dispute that.
And he could never answer the one question that's the most important question in this case. So tell me how Lucas got there. Could never, ever answer that question.
And then came the trial's most dramatic moment. Lucas Goodrum took the stand in his own defense.
For years, you've been hearing about how he's, the scion of this fortune, and then he gets on the stand and he really kind of sounds like a good old boy.
Did you have anything to do with the death of Katie Autry?
No, sir, absolutely not.
Did you do anything to Katie Autry?
No, sir.
He readily admit that he had not been a choir boy and he wasn't a saint. But at the same time, he was quick to tell you that he had nothing to do with the death of Katie Autry.
On the stand, Lucas Goodrum repeated the same story he'd been telling since he was first interrogated, that he was an innocent man being framed by the real killer.
What was it like to take the stand in your own defense?
It was just nerve-wracking just because I knew that, this is it. I mean, this is my life right here.
After a draining 2-week trial, the jury deliberated for a mere 3 hours before making its decision.
We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
Lucas Goodrum was found not guilty on all counts.
The thing that stood out the most was the fact that there was no physical evidence. We couldn't find anything beyond a reasonable doubt to convict this man.
Why would Stephen Soules lie about your involvement in the murder of Katie Autry?
To get out of jail, to make himself look better, to keep the heat off him.
But why would he finger specifically you? He could have picked anybody who had been at that party that night.
He disliked me the least. And me and him didn't really get along. We still dealt with each other, but there was still some dislike.
I still don't understand how he could hate you so much.
I can't either.
That he would implicate you in this murder.
I can't either.
I'm convinced Lucas Goodrum did not commit the murder. But you're going to find people that will never give it up. People that don't know all the facts. There will be those that go to their grave thinking that Lucas Goodrum had something to do with the death of Katie Autry.
After serving 2 years in prison waiting for his trial, Lucas Goodrum walked out of court a free man.
Can you describe the moment you heard the jury foreman's verdict of not guilty?
Yeah. I just lost it. I broke down in tears. The truth prevailed, and I was happy. It was a rush to judgment. They did railroad me. They kept me in jail for 23 months, almost 2 years. Took 2 good years of my life. It was kind of like a dream. The whole experience, I can say, was just like a dream, because now it don't seem real.
Stephen Soules, the man who confessed to the murder of Katie Autry, was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Lucas Goodrum believes no punishment could be too harsh for the man who falsely accused him. He still keeps tabs on Soules.
Every now and then I'll look and I'll see if they switched him over to prisons or if he's alive or not. Hopefully somebody shanked him or something in jail. That's what I keep hoping. Because karma's a bitch. It's gonna come back to get him.
You believe that?
I know it. I know karma is bad.
The long legal process ended 2 years to the day after Katie Autry was buried, but there was no sense of relief for her family and friends.
When the trial ended, it was like they murdered Katie all over again. It was like reliving her death a second time.
Katie Autry's family won a wrongful death suit against Western Kentucky University. The award was $200,000, the maximum allowed by law. I'm Paula Zahn. Join us next time when we're back on the case.
Thank you for watching Investigation Discovery on Demand.